Hi, my name is Terry Littleton. I'm a good friend of Bart Nunley's. This is kind of a story of how we met, really. Bart asked me to come on here and talk about how it was that we became. We're brothers of the wolf for 3 years, and I've known Bart for about 12 years now because of an activity that happened back early on, right? So, how this happened, I had a property down in the Ohio County, down the Green River. And the Green River is it's located, western Kentucky. And I bought this property. It was kind of 35 acres in the middle of a 3,000 acres of cold ground and stuff like that, real down in the real bottoms down there. So we made because it was on the river, we made a campsite out of it. And it came a big flood one year, and I had some properties where I had some food plots planted, and the river come up and got inside of them. So we had a camp out there, me and my daughter and my friend and my girlfriend at the time, and we were going to camp on the river that night. But as we went in, it was pretty flooded, so all the ground around there, this property, if you can understand, it has it's called Turkey Ridge, and it basically was a 500-foot ridge of cliffs and stuff that popped up out of the ground in right across the river from McLean County. They're kind of known for having flat grounds and these little pop-up places, right? So when the floods come, a lot of the animals and whatever migrates to these high places that are just like islands. Then they become islands, and you can imagine it's like a sea of water, almost like an ocean, but these islands pop up out of there. So this is one of those places, and it's right on the river. So we were going to camp out down there, and I wanted to go check out. We had our campers set up, we set our camper up, we got our fire going, and we went down. We was going to check out this food plot. We all walked down to the end, which is about 250 yards from where the camp that we were at it was. As we walked down to the river down there, we looked at the plot, and it's kind of messed up. And as we're listening there, we're right on the river, and across the river, a owl kind of sounds off, makes a sound. And I kind of sound back like an owl, but instead of an owl coming back, a coyote makes a sound. And when that coyote makes a sound up from by our camp up there, we hear this really strange sound that I've never heard before. And I've been in the woods my whole life. I've coon hunted since I was 12 years old, and everything you might imagine, Boy Scouts, camping out all the time. So I know the sounds of the woods and what make sounds. And I heard this sound, we all heard it, and it was more of a woo, then kind of a cat, kind of a wow, like that kind of howl. And we all looked at each other at that moment and kind of just, what the crap was that? But it was about 250 yards away or so. So as we kind of just talked about it, stood there for a minute, and as you do, you kind of try to theorize what it might be, and somebody said, oh yeah, this and that, or some Bigfoot or something like that, and we was like, okay. So we kind of talked about it for a minute. We took our time, we walked back up to camp, and we set up. Camp was fine, and it was dark at the time. Had a fire going, like I said. We set camp up, and I like to play guitar, so we was playing a song on the guitar, playing some Hank Senior, I think it was, kind of a crooning song. And at the end of that song, my buddy said, hey, take a break, hey, let's have a beer, whatever. And so we do that, and just then, this same sound that we heard earlier came, but it was right behind our camper, not 50 yards probably away from us. And it was, long and blood-curdling, like nothing a man or a human or anybody that I've ever heard could ever make. Kind of like when you hear a lion and you're in the zoo and you feel that he's like way over there and it's real impressive because nothing could have done that other than a lion, And it was something like that. So as we sit there, and it was from behind the camper, and like I said, we had a fire going, been there for a while. Nothing I'd ever known in life would ever make a sound back by camp and then hang by our fire and do it again. So I stood up, and when I stood up, it was like the blood went from my, from my face to my feet. Felt like I was white. I had my daughter there, I just kind of went, hey. And as I did that, hey, something took off, and I guess what you call a bipedal mode. Thump, 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 about that many times. And then it dropped down on all fours, thumpity thump, thumpity thump. And there's a gravel road down there where we come in, and we had our camper there. And it crossed that gravel road, and I just heard gravel flying. And I've heard many deer cross gravel road, and it's a hoofing kind of thing, or other animal. Only big deer animals we have around here is that. So it really confused me to hear that soft print running across that gravel like that. Disappeared into the bushes, made a crashing sound, and then that was it. About an hour, we obviously were all freaked out about it, you know. Some time went on and we talked about it and was by the fire, built the fire up with probably all the wood we had, pretty high. And it's the first time in my life I can ever remember being, you know, scared in the woods, because like I said, we coon hunted at night all the time. I skinned 100 coons by the time I was 15. But nothing like that had I ever heard, and nothing since. So about an hour later, we're sitting by the fire, and down the river, we're on the river there, and there's a cliff above us. And it was what sounded like was up by the cliff came the same sound. And you know, we could hear it, and we all just froze for a second. And then it became real. It kind of like it's kind of like, well, this thing is really around, you know. So some time went on, never heard it again. A couple weeks later, one time, heard it. We was like, listen, the quiet by the river down there is quiet, because it's in the middle of nowhere. So it's where the Rough River meets the Green River, by the way, in western Kentucky. In the bottoms, you know, it's nothing. Farmer's ground, dead end road. And whenever we bought up that region, so whenever we heard this sound, it was like, you hear it again, it was way, way off, like a mile off. That was the last time I heard it. And then about 1 minute after we heard it do that, we heard sirens going off from a long distance, like a, I don't know, ambulance or something running down the road. So what was going on was, I guess, kind of like a dog or a wolf or anything might hear that sound that we couldn't hear. It was already hearing it and howling at it, you know, making that sound. And I'm telling you, that was the first time I went out to my property after that, I'd left something out there, and I picked up a big, huge stick. My girlfriend was making fun of me because I don't walk around with a stick all the time.
Right.
But I felt like I needed to have a stick to go and get what it was I needed to get out of the camper. And it took some time. We finally started going back out there and camping again. Several other things happened, nothing that dramatic. But that's my story. So I got online.
So what you're saying is you were out there with your family, and you heard it. You were walking a distance away, and you heard it scream from around the camp, and you come back, and you were playing your guitar to Hank Williams, and I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, I'm thinking it was
Long Gone Lonesome Blues.
The Lovesick
Blues.
Blues.
Crooning song, right? It's kind of
Right.
like almost like a howl.
And
yeah.
so
I'd say.
when you stopped playing that song, the thing screamed out again.
Right. Both
and
times.
it sounded
was my
like
song.
it did. Now, did it sound like it had moved from its original location, or did it sound like it had stayed right there the whole time?
No, yeah, that's what got me being an outdoorsman. So that I don't think my friend or my girlfriend or my daughter really grasped that. But when we went down to the food plot, which, like I said, was about 250 yards away, and I heard it from there, it was loud and like you hear a lion in a zoo, that kind of thing, right?
Right.
So after we got back up there, it was that same kind of sound, but it was still right there behind the camper. So it was, I'm telling you, blood curdling. You know, it's the kind of thing where you just, my daughter went, "Dad," and that's when I stood up and I just said, "Hey." And when I stood up, I'm telling you, it was like I was, you know, just the
Right.
blood.
Made your blood run cold.
I'm sure I was white as a ghost, but you know, but just never encountered anything like that in the woods of Kentucky in my entire life. I mean, I've been around bobcats. I've heard all the bobcats, you know, doing their thing.
Right.
And doing all the mating calls and stuff that they do. And I know it does
Foxes,
sound weird and it's
peacocks,
crazy.
all the things
it's
that make
all that-
crazy noises
yeah.
at night.
But
You're
it-
real well familiar with that,
But
right?
it doesn't, yeah, but it doesn't sound like it comes from like a set of lungs that's like that big around, you know. No human
Yeah.
could have ever made that long, drawn out, the way it ended and the way it came. And so I got online and I saw some stories on there similar to that, and I found one on there, so I just wrote my story out online, and Bart was a part of that activity, and they picked up on the fact, and they called me and said, "Hey, you know, your story sounds, you know, really bona fide," and even though, you know, and I didn't see anything, I never did, and I looked for tracks, and that next morning, me and my buddy looked all around there. We couldn't, it was woods and leaves, you just don't, hard ground, you know, you don't see tracks like that.
Right.
So,
Very seldom do you come across tracks.
nothing like that. But the sound of that thing, taking those first few steps, was be imprinted in me for a long time.
Right. So you're saying it ran It sounded like it ran bipedally across that gravel, then it went down to
No,
all fours, or
no, it ran bipedally through so the gravel would be like over here. So here's the gravel road, you know, and here's my
Right.
camper, and this thing was like, not 50 yards behind the camper. It was amazing because we were singing songs and drinking a fire going, you know.
right, just having a
It
good time,
it had to stay there.
relaxing.
No animal that you would ever think of, cougar, panther, even if there was a mountain lion that's made its way over, and this is kind of what
Sure.
people, because that's the sound that people want to refer. That wouldn't have stayed there near my fire. That's not something. That's why I say, so it hit me pretty hard being, an outdoorsman. So through the course of that, that's how Bart and I met. He came out and done the investigation, and ever since then we've been buddies.
Talked to Terry on that first day. We had 2 investigations.
We've done sound
scheduled.
stuff, sound bites a lot since then out there together, right?
And Terry and I have been best friends ever since. So thanks, brother,
You're welcome.
for sharing your story with all the viewers.
You're welcome.
I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
Great.